Hey there, I'm Tori Soar, and welcome back to Sins and Wins, where we look at the 5 highest and 5 lowest rated episodes of a show and determine if they are a sin against the series or a win for it. Today we're covering the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series, which aired from February 8th, 2003 to February 28th, 2009. A quick reminder of the rules: the ratings for these episodes come from IMDb, clip show episodes are excluded, and multi-part episodes are combined into one. That last rule is especially important for this series, as TMNT 2003 loves its multi-part episodes. So we will technically be covering 15 episodes today, but because the multi-part episodes are largely combat focused, they won't take too much longer to get through. But with that, let's get into the first sin. Sin number 5 is Season 6 Fast Forward Episode 26, Zixxth Sense, from October 27th, 2007, with a 6.7 out of 10. Torben Zix, infamous bounty hunter, calls the Turtles to inform them he's being held hostage by alien mobsters, but tells them not to rescue him. Naturally, the Turtles ignore his plea and set off to free him, learning it was a ploy to meet with them and inform them about an asteroid made of dark matter set to collide with and destroy Earth in less than 24 hours. The Turtles and Zix set off to recover an experimental matter transmitter from Triceraton boss Zuko to transport the asteroid off its course of destruction. When the transmitter is damaged in their escape, Don goes off on his own to repair it, and once it's repaired, Zix volunteers to plant it on the asteroid himself, revealing it to be his ship in disguise and that he played the Turtles the whole time. Well, not before Don caught onto his scheme and swapped the transmitter out for the ship's beverage dispenser, giving Zix a taste of his own medicine. I've expressed before that I'm not a huge fan of Fast Forward because most of the episodes range from uninteresting to kind of annoying. However, Zixxth Sense is one of the episodes I actually really enjoy, and that is largely due to how much I love Zix as a character. I love how selfish, sassy, and manipulative he is, and this episode in particular is an incredible showcase of that personality with some very iconic lines from him.
Well, I've done my good deed for the century. I'm out of here.
As with the rest of Fast Forward, the Turtles unfortunately suffer from reading as far less competent than they are in the rest of the series. However, the fact that Don was able to clock Zix's scheme and turn it around on him makes up for that for the most part. There's also this fun little distraction scene from Mikey. It's always nice to see charming moments from him in these last 2 seasons, when he unfortunately comes across as obnoxious most of the time. Although Zixxth Sense definitely isn't winning any rewards as the best episode of the series, it's a fairly charming episode and one of the better ones from Fast Forward. Maybe it's just my love of Torben Zix clouding my judgment, but I'm gonna give it a win. It's a really fun episode. Win number 5 is Season 1 Episodes 10 and 11, The Shredder Strikes, with a score of 8.5 out of 10. Part 1, originally airing on April 12th, 2003, received an 8.4 out of 10, and opens with the Turtles sparring and claiming each of their weapons are superior to the others. When Leonardo becomes overconfident about his katanas being best, Splinter humbles him by seamlessly dodging his attacks and informing him he still has much to learn. Leo takes this personally and heads out to the rooftops to be emo when he's invited to meet with the leader of the Foot to discuss business. His brothers follow him and watch as he passes Orokusaki's tests, accepting a legendary sword as a gift. After he and Raphael get into a scuffle over his betrayal of Splinter, Leo comes to his senses and the Turtles go to Splinter for his insight. They learn that the Foot and Orokusaki are responsible for Master Yoshi's death, and the 4 of them return to the rooftops to confront the Foot before coming face to face with the Shredder himself. One thing I really enjoy seeing explored for Leonardo in this series is his impulsivity and anger. We see those emotions clouding his judgment in Part 1 with his willingness to team up with Orokusaki and taking him at his word. I will say he did kind of piss me off with the whole Master Saki comment, and I didn't love just how trusting Leo was of Saki this quickly, but I otherwise thoroughly enjoy how Leo's moment of insecurity served as the stepping stone for Shredder's introduction. Part 2 first aired on April 19th, 2003 and received an 8.5 out of 10. This episode is much more action-packed, with the Turtles initially getting their shells rocked by the Shredder before they are able to regroup and, with Splinter's help, take down the Shredder and avenge Master Yoshi once and for all. Or so they believe. 2003 Shredder is just so badass. It's kind of cheesy just how menacing and evil he is in this series at times, but it's a lot of fun, and I think his design is some of the best character design in this franchise. franchise.
He certainly has a strong sense of personal style. I mean, nice outfit.
That's what I'm saying, Mikey. Other than the Shredder, these episodes provide some insight into the general lore of the series, with the explanation of Hamato Yoshi's death and the Guardians beginning their alliance with the Turtles. Outside of the plot, there are a lot of fun character moments and interactions, like Splinter being a protective and exhausted father.
I cannot even take a few minutes for meditation without those kids running off.
And this prank Mikey pulls on Raph.
The lights are turning out. It's all going dark. Tell Raph. Tell Raph.
I'm right here, Mikey. I'm right here next to you.
You tell Raph. He's always been a big cheesehead. Psych! I can't believe you fell for that!
I especially love that last scene because it perfectly showcases Michelangelo and Raphael's dynamic, where Mikey very much gets on Raph's nerves a lot of the time, but Raph is still very caring and protective of Mikey where it matters. Overall, The Shredder Strikes is definitely a win for this series and the first of many great multi-part episodes. Sin number 4 is Season 7, Back to the Sewer, Episode 2, Karate Schooled, from September 20th, 2008, with a 6.7 out of 10. After the Turtles return from 2105, they start putting their lair back together and reunite with Casey and April. Casey tells the Turtles that in their year-long absence, he took up karate as a way to connect with their memory and runs off to his class. Worried about how these classes have been affecting Casey, April sends 3 of the Turtles to check up on him while she stays back and tries to get through to Donatello, who has been working non-stop after Splinter's disappearance and continuing to blame himself for what happened. Casey's teacher, Master Khan, uses a giant gong to hypnotize Casey and the other students to fight the Turtles. They manage to destroy the gong and free the students, learning that Khan is part of the Foot Clan before destroying his building and returning home. Though April was unsuccessful in convincing Dawn to take a break, they discover the first of Splinter's data bits that will set the Turtles off on a mission to free him from cyberspace. Unsurprisingly, most of the lower-rated episodes from the series come from Fast Forward and Back to the Sewer, as they are generally weaker seasons. That said, I do think most of them are pretty inoffensive, karate schooled included. I do think it's really sweet that Casey took up karate as a way to remember the Turtles after their disappearance, as well as April checking in with Don when he's clearly not doing well. But I cannot, in good conscience, talk about this episode without addressing the hate crime that is April's redesign. As an April design, it isn't inherently bad, but they want us to believe that this is 2003 April. First of all, they got rid of her iconic dark red hair for this bright orange, which already is kind of annoying. But the worst part of this redesign is that she looks like a teenager. What happened to the absolute baddie from the first 5 seasons? In general, the Back to the Sewer redesigns are pretty unfortunate, the most heinous crime being that they gave the Turtles irises, which look really bad a lot of the time. Naturally, these redesigns lose points for the season as a whole, however, the episodes themselves are generally okay. Karate Schooled is a fine episode. I don't have a lot of specific thoughts on the events of the episode, it's just a classic mind control plot, but it's fine, so I give it a pass. Win number 4 is Season 3, Episodes 25 and 26, Exodus, with an 8.5 out of 10. Part 1 premiered on April 16th, 2005, and has an 8.3 out of 10. Orokusaki is hosting a banquet to celebrate his departure from New York after helping rebuild the city. The Turtles, April, Casey, Leatherhead, and Fugitoid all sneak in to take down the Shredder once and for all, discovering the starship he plans to use to leave Earth and continue terrorizing the universe. Meanwhile, Bishop and the EPF, now aided by Baxter Stockman, are also keeping tabs on Saki and blow up the transport tunnel to cut the Shredder off from leaving the planet. Shredder demands Chaplin open the emergency launch doors, on which sit the banquet guests, who April helps bring to safety. The EPF unsuccessfully prevents the ship from launching, and the Turtles manage to stow away before the Shredder is able to escape them forever. Part 2 originally aired on April 23rd, 2005, and received an 8.7 out of 10. The Turtles and Splinter confront the Shredder and Karai in an intense battle, while Chaplin fends off missiles from the EPF until the ship is out of range. With the Shredder's new exosuit, our heroes are no match for him and Karai, and determine the only way to stop him is to blow up the spaceship, destroying everyone inside. However, the Utroms are able to put the ship in a stasis bubble, saving the Turtles and arresting Shirel. After a brief trial outlining the millions of deaths at his hands and an attempted coup, Shirel is found guilty and exiled to a comet for the rest of his days. Exodus is such a fantastic season finale, largely due to its insanely fun action. Seeing the EPF trying to take down the Shredder separately from the Turtles led to some really fun tension, and I especially loved seeing Bishop and Stockman's partnership forming in these episodes. Hun also finally learns that the man he's been serving all these years has been an alien this whole time, a realization that leaves him spiraling in season 4. The fight in part 2 on the starship is also insanely fun to watch. There is some really cool back and forth, and Splinter's fighting is especially engaging. And their failure to beat the Shredder and resorting to self-sacrifice leads to Leonardo's emo arc in season 4, which has been slowly building up throughout the series, but this finale really pushed him past the breaking point. Obviously, that's part of season 4 and not heavily featured in this episode, but because Exodus is the catalyst for Leonardo feeling like a failure at the start of season 4, I thought it was at least worth mentioning. Although the season 2 finale is my favorite because of how much I adore the Battle Nexus and Usagi, Exodus is definitely in second with how action-packed it is and the way it sets up some really compelling character arcs for Hun, Stockman and Bishop, and Leonardo. Exodus absolutely deserves to be labeled as a win for this series. It is such a fun season finale. Sin number 3 is season 7 Back to the Sewer, episode 6, Incredible Shrinking Serling, from October 25th, 2008, with a 6.6 out of 10. Tired of being stuck 100 years in the past, Serling gives each of the turtles an activity to keep them from bothering him, and he uses his own makeshift time window to attempt his return to 2105. His time window glitches out, causing him to shrink to the size of a toy, and he is transported to the past where he is mistaken as such by a little boy. After the time window brings him near to present day, to Serling's horror, he is found by the 4 turtles as mere tots. The turtles fight over Serling, eventually losing him on the surface, where he's taken away by an old man called Wendell. It turns out this man was the little boy from the past, and he's dedicated his life to trying to recreate the incredible toy from his boyhood. When the turtles go to retrieve Serling from Wendell's toy store, they are attacked by toybots that Serling fends off using other toys and by removing the batteries from the giant robot. The turtle tots learn their lesson about being too attached to objects and chuck Serling in the trash before he is brought back to the present by the Teenage Turtles. There aren't a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episodes I despise, but oh boy is this one of them. First of all, these turtle tot redesigns are so unbelievably cursed. They were absolutely adorable in season 3, and though I wasn't really a fan of their season 5 redesigns, they were nowhere near as horrendous as these Back to the Sewer redesigns. On top of that, they are so unbelievably annoying in this episode. I hate the way they talk, and they are such entitled little brats throughout. But Tori, they're kids. They're gonna be selfish. I don't give a fuck. It's still completely unenjoyable to watch. I do think it's kind of funny how in this episode the solution was to fight toys with toys, like in Michelangelo Toys Around from TMNT 87, which was a sin for that series. It was a silly solution then, and it is just as silly now. It's really unfortunate that the one Back to the Sewer episode that focuses on Serling is so insufferable because I love Serling as a character. He is my favorite part of Fast Forward. The one moment in the entire episode that I enjoyed was Serling getting to jump across rooftops with the turtles. That was a cute little ending. Otherwise, this episode is awful and earns its label as a sin. Win number 3 is season 1, episodes 21 to 23, Return to New York, from October 2003, with an 8.6 out of 10. The turtles and their allies return to their lair for the first time since the Foot started hunting them down in the sewers and regroup, planning their assault on the Shredder's headquarters. After sending in a remote-controlled battle shell as a distraction, the turtles begin their ascent through the skyscraper, fighting off the invisible Foot Tech ninjas and discovering something truly horrific: 3 monstrous Shredder clones. They manage to escape the attacking clones through an elevator shaft and find themselves on a mysterious floor of the building invisible to the schematics. On this floor is a room with 5 mystics embodying the elements of fire, water, earth, wind, and metal. Using the Sword of Tengu, Splinter is able to take out the mystics before he and his sons escape to an elevator that brings them to the top of the building. As they face the Shredder and fight off the Foot Elite and Hun, their battle is interrupted by Baxter Stockman in his Ultra Cyborg, hellbent on getting revenge on both Shredder and the Turtles. Although Stockman puts up a tough fight with his self-repairing mech, he is eventually defeated by his own creation and launched out of the building far into the sky. Splinter sits down to rest after the taxing battle as the Turtles resume their fight against the Shredder. The Guardians step in to assist the Turtles in the fight, and after the Sword of Tengu is passed between Leonardo and Shredder a few times, Leo uses the sword to cut his head off. Using Using the sword's power, the turtles fry most of the tech in the building and go to retrieve Splinter, only to discover that he's disappeared. Uncertain of what happened to their master, the brothers steal a helicopter and return home victorious, but at what cost? As is expected, this is a fairly combat-heavy episode and has some pretty fun fighting, which automatically gives it some points. I especially enjoy when Master Splinter is involved in the fighting, and him using the Sword of Tengu to take out the Foot Mystics despite it burning his hands is badass as hell. We also get Stockman's first attempt to betray the Shredder, which is an iconic turning point for his role throughout the rest of the series. And of course, the final fight between Leo and Shredder is so freaking cool. As exhausting as the stacks of fake-out deaths for Shredder in this series can be, this one is by far my favorite because Leo chops off his head. Not only is the visual of his head sliding off with the fire raging in the background insanely cool, but to see him at the very end of the episode pick up his own head and walk through the fire is an added layer of badass. Not to mention how deliberately this fake-out death alludes to the fact that he is an Utrom. A lot of the other deaths you could maybe argue how he managed to survive, but here it is abundantly clear that Shredder is more than just some guy from Japan. There's an underlying mystery. For the most part, I really enjoy this series of episodes, but there are a few things I wasn't a fan of. For one, the Shredder clones are so weird and make no sense considering Shredder is an Utrom and thus would not have humanoid clones of himself. I understand that they originally come from the comics and the clone thing is just an assumption on Donnie's part, but they just felt like a way to pad out the second episode in this three-parter. On a similar note, I've never cared for the Foot Mystics, and they do end up playing a bigger role later in the series, but that isn't until seasons 4 and 5. In general, I do think part 2 is the weakest of these 3 episodes because I do not care for the antagonists that are featured in them. I also think it's a little silly that after Leo chops off the Shredder's head, the Guardians are like, yes, the Shredder is defeated, even though they would presumably know that he's an Utrom, and thus cutting off his head would not prove fatal by any means. But those are just a few nitpicks in an otherwise really fun series of episodes. I personally wouldn't put these episodes in the top 5 because I think there are a lot better multi-part episodes, but it's still good and is a win for this series. Sin number 2 is Season 2, Episode 22, Return of the Justice Force, from May 8th, 2004, with a 6.5 out of 10. After Michelangelo's Justice Force comic leaves off on a cliffhanger, he joins his brothers and Casey on a road trip to Northampton to try to find a copy of the next issue. As Mikey learns that issue of the Justice Force doesn't exist, the comic book store is invaded by domoids that manage to kidnap one of the store's patrons, who turns out to be the Justice Force's very own metalhead. The store clerk reveals himself to be Stainless Steve Steele, and he attempts to regroup with the other members of the Justice Force before they too are taken away by domoids. The Turtles, Casey, and Stainless Steve sneak into the lair where the Justice Force members were taken and find Dr. Dome. Though Doc Dome and Stainless Steve blame each other for the attack, it turns out the one responsible is none other than battling Bernice's secret daughter Amanda, who has inherited her father's ability to command the Domoids. After reuniting with her father, Dr. Dome, Amanda stops her attack and everyone lives happily ever after. This episode is just kind of meh. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it isn't good either. In general, I don't find the superhero episodes of this series particularly interesting, and I think this is probably the weakest one. Well, other than an episode from Back to the Sewer, but we'll be talking about that one soon enough. The whole love triangle rivalry between Stainless Steve and Dr. Dome is just not engaging at all, largely because love triangles tend to be insufferable most of the time, but especially because we don't really know these characters at all, so I'm even less invested in them. In general, the writing of this episode is very cheesy, especially with the reveal of Amanda and Dr. Dome being her father.
I'm her daughter, Ananda.
How are you able to control all my robots?
I thought you would have figured that one out by now, Daddy.
Although that cheesiness is probably intended to poke fun at superhero stories and their dramatic plot twists, it's such a drastic shift from the typical tone of the series. One thing I do really enjoy about this episode is seeing how into comics Mikey is, especially with his impeccable voice acting at the start.
Steve! Don't! Look out!
Bernice! No!
I wouldn't go so far as to say this episode is a sin because it's fairly inoffensive, but it's absolutely one of the weaker episodes of the series, so I'm gonna give it a pass. Win number 2 is Season 1, Episodes 17 and 18, The Shredder Strikes Back, with an 8.8 out of 10. Part 1 originally aired on June 7th, 2003, and has a score of 8.7 out of 10. Leonardo rises early and leaves April's apartment to do his morning exercises when he gets attacked by the Foot. He initially is able to fight them off pretty easily, but as time goes on, more and more Foot soldiers swarm him, and he is quickly worn down by their numbers. Back at April's place, the other Turtles and Splinter help out with breakfast and other chores, wondering why Leonardo has been out so long, but not too worried about him. Meanwhile, Leonardo comes face to face with an enemy they thought they had defeated with a water tower not too long ago, the Shredder. When the Turtles are finally ready to start searching for Leonardo, he's thrown through April's window and informs them of the Shredder's return. Part 1 does kind of get on my nerves with how long the Turtles are like, wow, Leo's been gone kind of a long time, maybe we should check on him. Nah, he's fine, but I do otherwise really enjoy seeing Leo fighting off the Foot soldiers on his own and some of the strategies that he uses, and there's some pretty fun banter with all of the characters back at April's place.
One would think that table manners were a part of their training.
One would think.
Part 2 from June 14th, 2003 has an 8.9 out of 10 and follows our heroes as they attempt to escape second time around with their lives, enduring endless attacks from the Foot, including the Foot Elite and Shredder himself. They manage to hide away in an old walk-in freezer as the Shredder sets the building ablaze before it's destroyed in a fantastic explosion that not even the Turtles could have survived. I love this two-parter so much, and that is largely due to how fantastic the fighting is. Part 2 is undeniably one of the best episodes in this entire series. It is so enjoyable to watch. The tension of trying to flee this small building while needing to fend off an endless horde of soldiers is so insanely fun to watch, and the stakes of Leonardo being severely injured build up that tension even higher. I thoroughly enjoy the equivalent of the scene from the 1990 live-action film, but this version of it is an improvement upon that already really fun action sequence. Outside of the combat, there are some very iconic lines in this episode. First of all, it has my favorite bit in the entire series, and that is the Turtles' reaction to seeing the Foot Elite for the first time.
Nice hats! Nice hats.
Nice hats.
Yeah, we thought so too.
One of my favorite Michelangelo lines is also from this episode. It is so fun to quote.
Oh yeah, Mr. Spiky Pants? Well, you're the one who should be saying farewell to yourself.
Oh yeah, Mikey, that got her.
Finally, Shredder drops one of the hardest lines in the entire franchise when he sets the building on fire to destroy the Turtles. It's so badass.
Like the phoenix, I have risen from the ashes. And into my fire, you shall fall.
I will say, as amazing as these episodes are, I do somewhat struggle with taking it seriously after watching the Fight for the Fox Box special, because all I can think of when I see Leo get thrown through the window is him muttering a cryptic series of letters and numbers.
I hope Leo has better luck.
I got Shredder's part of the code. It's 5E3KZ.
Fools, you may have stolen the Foxbox broadcast codes from me, but that is the last thing you will ever do!
Silliness aside, The Shredder Strikes Back is an amazing set of episodes and undeniably deserves to be labeled as a win for the series. The worst episode of 2003's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, according to IMDb, is Season 7, Back to the Sewer, Episode 12, Superpower Struggle, from February 21st, 2009, with a 6.2 out of 10. Michelangelo brings Raphael along to a comic book convention and tries to convince him to dress up as Turtle Titan's trusted sidekick Tortoise Boy, to no avail. At the convention, Dr. Malignus shows up and steals the glowing green mantle cape, but is intercepted by Raphael before he can escape with it. When the Justice Force shows up to intervene, Mikey ties the cape onto Raph and calls him his sidekick, but the cape transforms Raph into a new green mantle. After running a few tests on him, the Justice Force recruits Raph as the Green Mantle to be the newest member of the Justice Force. Overcome by jealousy, Mikey lures Raph into a setup to try and steal the cape from him, and while they fight over the cape, it rips in two. Suddenly, Dr. Malignus appears to take the cape from them, but seeing it destroyed, decides to destroy them instead. Learning to work together by splitting the cape's powers, Mikey and Raph defeat Malignus and return the cape to the Justice Force, and the original Green Mantle returns to his post. The way this episode infuriates me to no end should be studied, because I despise how much they butchered Raph and Mikey here. It's been very clearly established that Michelangelo is super into comics and superheroes and wants to join up with the Justice Force, which he technically is a part of by the end of season 5. However, Raphael, who has expressed zero interest in superheroes and has actively found them to be lame, is suddenly ecstatic to be part of the Justice Force after having superpowers for less than a day. Not only does it not really make sense that Raph is taken in so suddenly as this new member of the Justice Force after going through just a few tests of his strength and abilities, but he's such an asshole to Mikey about it.
Don't worry, Mikey. If you want, you can be my sidekick. Lame-o lad.
Raph teases Mikey and is kind of mean to him throughout the series in a sibling way, but never to this degree where he fully acts like and believes he's better than him. It feels like he's just taken up the green mantle simply because he knows it means something to Mikey and wants to be a dick about it. Which is so out of character for him when the show has made it abundantly clear that Raphael deeply cares for Mikey and would never take anything like this away from him just to be a dick. It's been established that Turtle Titan isn't built for full-time superhero duties, which is totally fine and honestly really fun for Mikey's character as it allows him to realize that he is much more effective as a ninja. However, he's been a great ally to the Justice Force and especially Silver Sentry, and so him being dismissed and ignored in favor of his brother who just circumstantially stumbled upon some superpowers is infuriating. It also undermines the whole character arc of Mikey realizing, hey, it's better to be a ninja than a superhero, because suddenly Raph, oh no, he can be a superhero because he has superpowers now. It's so stupid. On top of this, Raph's green mantle design is fucking hideous. The way they changed his face shape to have this aggressive jawline and gave him this nose on the mask looks so unbelievably awful. I hate it so much. The one singular thing I like about this episode is there's this really cute moment between Mikey and Raph once they defeat Malignus.
That's what happens to evildoers when their paths cross the Turtle Titan!
And Tortoise Boy, the Shelled Wonder.
Other than that, fuck this episode. I not only agree that it deserves to be labeled as a sin, but I wholeheartedly agree that it is the worst episode of the series. I hate it so much. The best episode of TMNT 2003, according to IMDb, is Season 3, Episode 21, Same as It Never Was, from March 19th, 2005, with a 9.3 out of 10. After he and his brothers are scattered across time and space, Donatello finds himself alone in their lair, now completely trashed. He's been transported to a dystopian version of New York City where the Shredder has control and is immediately attacked by a bunch of foot soldiers, from which he is rescued by a middle-aged, one-armed Michelangelo who informs him he's been missing for 30 years. In his absence, they lost Splinter and Casey, and Raph and Leo went off on their own in their angry grief. Don and Mikey meet up with April and a few other allies, asking April if she can get Leo and Raph to meet with them. After Don puts an end to Leo and Raph's bickering, the four turtles get to work on a plan to take down the Shredder and end his corrupt rule. Donatello, his brothers, and April launch an attack at Foot headquarters, steadily taking down their adversaries. Michelangelo is surrounded by Amazonian blade bots and killed, followed by Karai killing off Leonardo and Raphael. April takes down Karai before Donatello uses the tunneler to kill the Shredder once and for all. Mourning the loss of the turtles but hopeful for the future, April says goodbye to Donatello as he gets pulled back home. Same as It Never Was is such an iconic alternate universe and concept that it alone has produced so much fan content. I am such a sucker for bad futures and learning just how easily everything can go wrong. An aspect of this episode I absolutely adore is the fact that the catalyst to this bad future is Donatello disappearing. That emphasis on how important the turtles are to one another, that one of them disappearing leads everything to fall apart, is a really compelling story beat. I'm also a huge fan of each of the future turtles designs, from Michelangelo's missing arm to Raphael's missing eye to Leonardo's Matrix outfit. I also love how Hun and Stockman were punished by being attached to one another. It's such a fitting choice. I will say, as dramatic as each of the turtles being killed off in the final fight was, Leonardo's death is really silly because he gets slashed across the back with a sword and despite having a literal shell is somehow killed by that. Earlier this year, I was a guest on an episode of the Ninja Turtle Power Hour podcast, and when we were talking about Same as It Never Was, there was this sentiment that it was a pretty weak episode and sort of baby's first bad future. And I definitely see that. I don't think Same as It Never Was is conceptually groundbreaking, and there have been far better executed bad futures even within this franchise. Another sentiment was that Don was being selfish and idealistic, and his actions led the other turtles to die even though they weren't really gung-ho about this plan in the first place. And the plan that he made specifically kept him safe but put his brothers in danger, and so he kind of killed them off in a kind of selfish way. I also somewhat understand the sentiment, but the whole reason the Turtles gave up on fighting Shredder was because their team fell apart and they lost some of their allies, not because they were content to let Shredder rule. Them dying in battle to defeat this great evil is something all of them would much rather do than sit around in this dystopian world waiting to die. The only reason they did give up and accept that fate is because they fully believed defeating Shredder was impossible. But with Don back in the picture, they realized it may be possible once more, even if there is a loss of life on the way. And the Turtles' willingness to die for the greater good is reflected in this very season's finale, Exodus, where they are willing to blow themselves up to take out the Shredder. I honestly would argue this is a point in the episode's favor, as it not only emphasizes the importance of their brotherly bond, but that they are willing to do whatever it takes to do the right thing. Same as It Never Was isn't perfect, but its flaws are so minuscule and the concept is so solid that it would require them to completely butcher it to make it unenjoyable, which did not happen. Overall, I do agree that Same as It Never Was deserves its label as a win for 2003's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and is one of the most iconic episodes in the franchise. That does it for this episode of Sins and Wins. Let me know if you agree that these are the best and worst episodes of the series, or if there are any episodes that you are surprised didn't make the cut. I'm hoping to finish up the TMNT Sins and Wins episodes by the end of this year, as well as covering a few other shows, so make sure to subscribe so you are notified when those videos come out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.